everyone. Welcome to Talks at Google. I am Deepthi and I work for the Devices and Services group here at Google. Today, I have the privilege to host a talk by Zack Friedman, who is a longtime friend and classmate from Wharton and who's here today to talk to us about his book, The Lemonade Life. Well, Zack is no stranger to Google. In fact, he was here in October last year for a talk about the student debt loan crisis. So welcome back, Zack.
Thank you, Dipti. It's great to be back at Google. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So for those of you who are meeting Zack for the first time, Zack is the best-selling author of the blockbuster book, The Lemonade Life, which Apple named one of the fall's biggest audiobooks in 2019. The Lemonade Life also debuted as the #1 new business book on the Apple Books bestseller list. Zack has inspired millions of people through his powerful insights, including more than 100 million who have read his advice in Forbes. Zack is also the founder and CEO of Make Lemonade, a personal finance comparison website that empowers you to live your best financial life. So Zack, thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to us today.
Thank you, Dipti. It's so great to be back at Google.
Well, I read your book recently, and I must say I found it to be very inspirational and relatable.
Thank
I
you.
loved how you provided practical and actionable advice on, how to bring on more happiness, success, and positive psychology in our lives. Something that we all care about, right?
Absolutely. I'm so passionate about that too. So I'm glad that it resonated.
Also, what I particularly enjoyed when I went through the book was how you teased out the insights and literally served those on a platter to the reader through your interesting anecdotes and experiences.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So I won't give away any more. And without further ado, dive right into asking you a few questions, if that is okay with you.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So before I ask my first question, though, a quick note for the audience about the format of this talk. I'm going to interview Zack about the first 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll leave 15 to 20 minutes at the end for your questions. So with that, let's get started. So Zack, in your book, you write about the lemon life and the lemonade life. What do these mean, and what's the difference?
So every day, all of us, whether we realize it or not, are making a fundamental choice. And that choice is, will we lead a lemon life or a lemonade life? And the lemon life is a life you really don't want to lead. It's a life that's built on settling and chasing and pretending. And it's really living a life that's less than your best self. Unfortunately, most people live there and they may not even realize it. But there's a better life, and that life is called the lemonade life. And in the lemonade life, no matter who you are, where you come from, what you do for a living, or how much money you have, everyone has a shot at greatness. And the lemonade life is leading your best life on your terms. And it's built on two things: purpose and possibility. Purpose is the underlying reason why you do what you do. It's the reason you get up every single morning. It's the why in your life. And possibility is endless opportunity. So when you match purpose and possibility and you do it through action, you can lead the lemonade life.
Great. So purpose and possibility. I know you talk about that in your book, using the concept of ikigai, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's your true calling. So how does one stop living the lemon life and start leading the lemonade life?
Yeah, so that's really what the lemonade life is all about. And I really boiled it down to these 5 switches, as I call them in the book. They're just like light switches, and they're behaviors that live inside all of us. And so when I was starting to write the lemonade life, I really wanted to understand one fundamental question, which was, what drives success? And as I started to study leaders in business and politics and sports and other aspects of life, I saw a lot of commonalities, and those commonalities really could be distilled down to 5 behaviors that really live inside all of us. And when you flip those 5 internal switches, it allows you to move from leading a lemon life, which we don't want to lead really because it's based on settling, to a lemonade life. And it's very easy to do. And I walk through in the book how to flip each of those 5 switches in detail. But that's really the impetus to change. And I talk about the lemonade life being the world's most exclusive club, but it really, everyone has access to it. So it has no barrier to entry if you can do the right steps in your life to lead a more purpose-filled life.
Great. So Zack, we would love to learn a little more about the switches, the 5 switches that you talked about. But before that, I have a question. So your book opens with your lunch with Warren Buffett. Now, that's very impressive. Tell us, what was that like?
That was phenomenal. So I had a wonderful opportunity with a group of folks to go out to Omaha and spend time with Warren Buffett. He was very generous with his time. And if you have the opportunity to meet Warren Buffett and let alone have lunch with him, you expect to learn all the great insights into investing and the economy, his storied business career. And I heard a lot of it that day when we sat with him and he spoke with us. But I actually heard a deeper lesson that I took away there that helped inspire me to write The Lemonade Life. And Warren Buffett started talking more about happiness and about really your true calling and purpose in life, and really not following the crowd of, chasing finance in New York or running to Silicon Valley if you want to be in technology. Warren Buffett didn't set up his firm, Berkshire Hathaway, in New York. He went back to Omaha. And it really spoke to me about leading a more independent life, right? And he spoke about taking risks. He spoke about happiness and doing the things that give you enjoyment and pleasure in your life. Obviously, you need to be successful, but it's really that internal happiness that helps become the foundation for that. So when I heard Warren Buffett speak, and it was really moving for me, and it was a fundamental change. A spark went off inside of me, and it helped in many ways inspire me to delve into this topic a lot more about happiness. And it really became an inspiration for me for The Lemonade Life.
That's awesome. So now I'd like to actually go back to the 5 switches that you talked about. So what are those 5 switches?
So the best way to remember these 5 switches is through an acronym. And that acronym is PRISM, PRISM. And a prism is the lens through which you can lead a more purpose-filled, a more possibility-driven life. And the 5 switches are this. P is for perspective. R is for risk. I is for independence. S is for self-awareness, and M is for motion. And in The Lemonade Life, I walk through all of those, each of those 5 switches, not only with practical tips, but stories from some of the greats who've been very successful and kind of turned their lives from some, very heavy bottom points to reach their pinnacle. And each of those are behavioral driven. They're based on positive psychology, but they're also very practical oriented. And we can apply them in our everyday life, but we can also apply them at work as well and to better our career. So changing your perspective is really where it all starts. And if you have a positive mindset, and it's not just, going on and watching YouTube, as wonderful as it is, for 5 minutes and watching a motivational talk and getting really inspired. It's really about rewiring your brain and the neurotransmitters so that you have really a perspective that allows you not to be happy 24 hours a day, but it allows you to kind of weather the storms, the ups and downs, the uneven balance in life. So that when you do face those challenges, you have a more opportunity-driven life than you might not have if you're stuck in a lemon life where you're settling or pretending or chasing. And I walk through each of those switches in the book that takes you all the way through down to motion. So PRISM is the best way to remember that. And there's a lot more detail in Lemonade Life.
Sure. I love that acronym PRISM. So easy to remember and register. In your book, you also talk about 4 different types of people. Who are these people? And how do we identify, which of those we are?
Sure. That's a great question. So in The Lemonade Life, you will meet 4 people. 3 of them live, unfortunately, in the lemon life. And you've met all these people before, whether it's at a backyard barbecue or in your social circles or maybe at school or at work. So the first person is called an eternal excuser. And you can probably tell by the name that they're people who just make endless excuses for why they're stuck in their current status in life, right? I'm too old. I don't have enough money. It's too hard. It'll never work out. There's so much competition. And so they almost talk themselves out of achieving greatness because they create these artificial barriers that are surrounding them, these roadblocks in their life. And they can never lead the lemonade life because they don't open their mind to more opportunity or more possibility. So the eternal excuser is kind of the poster child for the lemon life. The next person we meet is called a steady settler. And steady settlers are people who may be successful in life, but they're really pretending. They're really living a life of dependence. They may be keeping up with the Joneses. They may be chasing, their friends or social circles or their neighbors. They may be working in a job just because of the prestige, the name of the company, or the money or the paycheck they collect, but they're not fundamentally happy with where they are. They end up kind of following the herd mentality. And unfortunately, if you live a life of dependence, by definition, you're following someone else's path. You're not following your own path. So until steady settlers can break free from that life of dependence and herd mentality, they also can't lead the lemonade life. And then thirdly, in the lemon life, we meet someone called a change chaser. And a change chaser, the best way to think about that, it's like your crazy uncle who's coming up with a new, business idea. And they kind of, explore the idea for a little bit, but they don't actually take the time to really do the work like an entrepreneur should. And before you know it, they're kind of on to the next opportunity, the next opportunity. And we see people like this not only in business, but we see them in relationships and friendships. And it's really not something that you want to do, because you're ultimately you're chasing something. And I think the people that are more grounded, who are not settling, who are not pretending, who are not chasing, those are the folks who have the power to lead the lemonade life. And so in the lemonade life, we meet the fourth character. And this is the person you really want to be. It's called a daring disruptor. And daring disruptors, they change the game. They're transformational. They offer ingenuity. They're creative. But most importantly, they're proactive and they're independent minded. And that proactivity and that independence is what helps drive them. So they stand out in life and they stand out at work. So those are the four people that you'll meet in the lemonade life and the lemon life. But you really want to focus on being that daring disruptor.
Right. And I want to let the audience know that you give a lot of great tips and practical advice on how you can be that daring disruptor if you're not one already. So I actually have a question about, these four different types of people that you just described. Now, let's say you are a daring disruptor, or naturally, or let's say you've worked really hard to achieve that status and that lemonade life. Can you, at any point in your life, possibly regress to lemon life? Do you think that there is a natural state that we all tend to gravitate towards? And while that can be changed, do you think that change is temporary or permanent?
Nothing's permanent. You always have the power to change your circumstances. And so the answer is yes, you can be a daring disruptor one day. And if you don't work at it and continue the path, you can regress and be back in the lemon life. So the lemonade life is not a destination, it's a way of life. And so every day is a new day to restart your life. And so if yesterday you were in the lemon life, it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter what happened last week. It doesn't matter what happened 5 years ago. Every day is a new opportunity at greatness. And so when you wake up every day, every 24-hour period, it resets. So you have 365 days each year, 365 opportunities to lead the lemonade life. But if you don't work at it, if you don't keep flipping those 5 switches, honing your skills, honing things like self-awareness and independence, and really modeling your perspective, yes, it's possible that you go back to being a change chaser, you go back to being a steady settler. So we constantly have to work on it, constantly have to reinvent, constantly have to push the envelope to lead the life that we want to live and become the people that we aspire to be.
Great. You also talk about the chasm of Kant. Can you explain that to us in a little bit of detail? You talk about that in the context of one of the switches, risk. Would love to learn more about that.
The chasm of Kant is kind of an artificial boundary. It's a roadblock where all the naysayers win, okay? All the people that have told you in your life, all the people that say you can't, all the people that don't know the word yes or don't know about support, they're really the people that tell you no. And sometimes it's us that tell ourselves no, right? We have these artificial conversations with ourselves where we tell ourselves, look, you can't do this, or there's too much competition, or people are going to laugh at you. And so we erect these false barriers, these false boundaries. And in the book, I talk about it as almost an electric fence. And we feel that if we go too close to the fence, right? If we step outside our comfort zone or we step outside our boundaries, there's a risk of failure, or there's a risk of looking foolish, or there's a risk of embarrassing ourselves. And that really limits your possibility. And so the chasm of Kant, again, is where the naysayers win. It's the people who tell you no. It's where they shine and flourish. And so it's really up to all of us to kind of find ways to step outside the chasm of Kant, to turn no's into yeses. And I talk about ways to do that in the lemonade life. But the chasm of Kant is really a place that you don't want to be, but there are ways that you can proactively exit the chasm of Kant.
Right. And I think you mentioned in your book about how eternal excusers are most susceptible to falling into that trap. And sometimes they can just take you down with them.
Absolutely. If you're spending time with an eternal excuser, there's really no escape if you're dedicating your time and energy to an eternal excuser, because it will change your perspective, right? If you invest your time and energy around someone who is bringing you down, you will be brought down, right? If you spend your time focused on worrying, then your life becomes about worrying. If you focus your life on, being told by someone else or by yourself that you can't accomplish something, you can't start a business, you can't get promoted, you can't have happiness when you're 30 years old, then those things won't come true, because that's who you're dedicating your time and energy to. So yes, eternal excusers can bring everybody down. So you want to avoid them at all costs.
So Zach, you write about morning routines in the lemonade life. I know I've struggled with establishing those routines and discipline in my life. So I'd love to ask you, about the importance of these morning routines. Tell us more.
Morning routines are critical, and I didn't always have one in my life, but when I started incorporating it, it was monumental for me. And so I'll tell you some of the Lemonade Life advice on morning routines. So Steve Jobs used to ask himself every morning. He shared this in a commencement address at Stanford in 2005, and he would have this one test where he'd look in the mirror and he'd say to himself, if today were my last day on Earth, would what I'm about to do, would it make me happy? Just that simple question. And if the answer to that question after a couple of days was no every day, then he knew that something needed to change, right? Similarly, Benjamin Franklin would wake up and say, what good can I do today, right? What good can I share with the world? And that was a way to kind of give you more purpose and intention in the morning. For me personally, I like to wake up and have a gratitude journal. For those of you who aren't familiar, this can be a notebook where you write down 3 things for which you're grateful every morning. They don't have to be monumental things. You can be thankful for your family. You can be thankful to be awake or alive, thankful for your job, thankful for a compliment you got yesterday. Whatever those are to you, if you take the time to actually write them down, don't just think about them. And then spend about 10 or 15 minutes reflecting on it and what it means to you, meditating, so to speak. That's something that I do every morning. I also pray after that. I find that to be very refreshing and fulfilling in my life. And when you take the time to do those things in the morning, it really sets yourself on a path, on a positive note, right? It gives you kind of a sense of purpose. It grounds you. You remember why you're here. It goes back to that why in your life. Don't grab your phone first thing in the morning. It's what everybody does, right? They grab their phone, they go on social media, they check their email. Don't do that. That's not the right way to start your day. And some people also want to have a nighttime routine. That's great too. Some people like to reflect in a journal at the end of the day too. That works just as well. But I like to do it in the morning. And I think everyone has their own routine. It could be meditation. It could be exercise. You could go for a run, go for a swim, or some other way that you can reflect. You can spend time with loved ones. Try to do that, incorporate it into your life, because it'll give you a lot more intention to start your day on a positive note before you tackle the challenges that might lie before you.
Great advice, Zach. Yeah, I know it's a challenge, but we all need to stay away, at least for some part of the day, from these buzzing, distracting devices. And yes, you mentioned gratitude. That is very, very powerful. I agree. And I liked how you mentioned that could be very meditative in itself.
It's true.
So some great tips. How about self-awareness?
Self-awareness. Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, yes, self-aware. Please go ahead. Did you have a question about it?
I was just going to say, I know you talk about self-awareness in detail. That's, one of the key topics of discussion in your book. We'd love to learn more about that.
So self-awareness is a term, obviously, everyone's heard before, right? But people take very little time to actually invest to understand what it means. So self-awareness is probably the most underinvested of the 5 switches, meaning people don't practice it as much. But I think it's the most powerful thing you can do. Why? It's really important and honest in the Lemonade Life that you understand who you are as a person. If people are afraid to do it because they don't want to look in the mirror and maybe find negative, blemishes, so to speak. But the people that invest the time and the energy to understand who they really are, really identify, here's what I'm really good at, and here's what I'm not really good at, right? Everyone wants to be great at everything, right? And they tell themselves that, they convince themselves that. And that can lead down a path to destruction, right? You might be chasing a job you're really not meant for, where you can't excel, opportunities at work that you think you can tackle, but maybe you can't. The world becomes a lot more efficient, and you'll have a huge weight off your shoulders when you really understand who you are. And having weaknesses and understanding that you're not good at things, or you may be more apt to fail in certain areas, that's great. You want that feedback, right? You want to spend the time to understand what you're good at and what you're not. Why? Because you can focus on the things that you're good at. When you have strengths and weaknesses, focus on the strengths. You don't have to be great at everything. No one's a perfectionist. And I think too many people spend too much time and energy and years in some ways trying to prop up their weaknesses. Instead, time is limited. Focus on your strengths, hone your skills, hone your skill set. But the people who really understand themselves, and that goes for businesses too. A lot of businesses want to be great at everything rather than understanding their core competencies. And there's a great case study I have in the book with the CEO of Domino's Pizza. If you remember some ads they put out years ago, where they started talking about all the bad things about the company, right? They were saying things in the commercial like, our sauce tastes like ketchup, our crust tastes like cardboard. That's really, really honest, right? And that was customer feedback. And people connected and identified with that. So the people who are willing to put themselves out there and are not really care what people think about them and just being self-aware of who they are. That's the greatest gift that you can give yourself to lead a more independent filled life built on self-awareness.
So in the section where you talk about self-awareness in your book, you also mention self-compassion, and that really stuck with me because sometimes, when you evaluate or think about your strengths and weaknesses, you sometimes tend to get overcritical. So, the fact about being self-compassionate, about loving yourself, resonated with me really well.
Thank you. So many people, their first inclination is to love someone else. And that's a beautiful thing, right? We love our families. We love our significant others, our friends, our children. We love the people we work with in some cases. And I think that you have to, when you're evaluating yourself and self-awareness, right? It's not to throw yourself like a punching bag, right? I mean, you really need to fundamentally love yourself, as you said, Dipti, and also to have self-compassion. Take some time for yourself, right? Self-care is important, as you're kind of, hitting the ups and downs of life and trying to tackle mountaintops. It's important to step back and spend time with yourself, right? Really reflect and get to know yourself better. Again, I think people invest time, for the right reasons and in a positive way in relationships and friends and family, but also spend time on yourself, not only with self-awareness, but also building yourself up, I think is important as well. But the more you get to take time to take care of yourself, it can be meditation. It can be taking some time off, doing things that you enjoy, maybe alone sometimes. That's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to walk the independent road. I think you'll be stronger for it.
So in Lemonade Life, you write about this concept of deferred happiness. Can you tell us more?
Sure. I think we've been taught for so many years what's really a raw deal. And that's this idea that you have to work hard in school, get good grades, you get a job, you work in the job for 40 years, and then you retire, and then you get to be happy. That's a raw deal, right? That is a raw deal. It's like this idea of deferred happiness that you can't be happy until you retire, and then you get to, go play golf and travel the world and spend time with the grandkids. But what about those first, 50, 65 years? Where did those go? And so deferred happiness is really about postponing happiness, and it's not a great thing. So the question is, how can you get happy today? Right? What could you do to increase your happiness today? And, people who live the lemon life, they think about, how do I work? And then how does that work? How do I make money? And then how do I get happy? But they really have that backwards. We really should be thinking about, how do you get happy today? Right? Research shows that we want happiness to be the precursor to success, not success as the precursor to happiness. So when you're in the lemonade life, it's, how do I get happy today? That allows me to access freedom. Freedom is about the independent mindset and the purpose and the courage to achieve happiness. And then once I get happy and achieve freedom, then I can achieve success. And so it's this whole concept of, how can we get happier today, right? Find more ways, and I talk about a ton of them in the Lemonade Life, of how you can get happier today, because that's actually going to give you the impetus and the power and the courage to be more happy today, which will lead to continued happiness tomorrow.
Right. So, we all know money today is more valuable than money tomorrow. So it's the same thing with happiness. Focus on your happiness today. It's more valuable than your happiness tomorrow.
That's true.
So what are some of the ways that you recommend that we can get happier?
There are so many ways to get happier. One that I find really interesting that a lot of people don't think about. We all know that when we're happy, we tend to smile. But research actually shows the opposite is true as well. If you smile, like we're doing right now, talking, it actually makes you happier, right? It actually flips it on its head. That's what research has shown. And that goes for even a fake smile. It's called a Duchenne smile. Even if you just, move your lips and in the formation of a smile, it actually makes you happier based on your muscles in your body. So that's something that's important as well. I think another thing that makes people happy is really focusing on gratitude. And I spoke about that earlier. Gratitude is just, it's not just on Thanksgiving. It's really every single day of just appreciating what you have in your life rather than what you don't, right? Focusing on that abundance. It doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be materialistic. What do you have in your life that makes you happy? It could be your family. It could be your friends. It could be your job. It could be the flower patch outside your window. Find something in your life that gives you gratitude. I talk in the Lemonade Life about, the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And what are the 7 wonders in your life that make you feel grateful. That's a powerful thing. I think also buying experiences rather than things is really important, right? Building those memories. So, what's more important to you? The experience you had dog sledding in Alaska or the last pair of shoes you bought. I think those memories and those experiences are very happy driven as well. And then I would just mention two more I think are very powerful. In the Lemonade Life, I write about committing acts of kindness. So the more kindness we can give to others, it actually boosts not only their happiness, but also our happiness. So these are things like the next time you go grocery shopping, pay for the person behind you, right? It will obviously give them happiness to get free groceries, but it will also give you happiness as well. We call that hedonic adaptation. It's the idea of getting more happiness from giving than actually receiving. And then similarly, you can actually write thank you notes. There's been research that have shown when you write someone a thank you note, just the act of writing it doesn't have to be a good thank you note, doesn't have to be, fantastic prose. Just the idea of thanking someone, again, will give happiness and appreciation to the recipient, but it also, as the giver, as the writer of that note, will give you increased happiness. So those are some easy ways that you can get happier today.
Yeah, that is great. We often think about helping others, and then we tend to think about, all the big things that we want to do for that person. Or sometimes we just think very narrowly about, maybe changing someone's life or changing someone's career as something that you can do for the person. But just as you mentioned, Zack, we can do it in small ways, right? Like you can just say a simple thank you and make someone's day, right? Just
absolutely
pay for the person standing behind you in the line at the grocery store, and
absolutely,
that's someone's day.
Absolutely, and also at work, give a compliment to someone for a great job. I mean, if you're a manager or a leader at work, you can't imagine how much that means to someone. So many people don't get any feedback at work unless it's their annual review, if they even have an annual review. And if you can just give someone a compliment, it literally builds goodwill and loyalty for weeks, if not months. So take the time to compliment people if they're doing a good job in your organization. I think that can also be very impactful.
Great. So you talk about goals in your book. Now, having a goal is easy, but achieving them is the hard part. So what's the best way to set goals?
So we've all heard about goal setting. We all have heard about goals. But as you said, yes, it's the process. I'm very focused on process in this book. And so another acronym for you to remember, which I think helps with goal setting, and that is SNAP, S-N-A-P. So I like when I'm ever setting goals, I like them to be, S is for specific. You need that specificity. You can't just say, I want to be rich one day, right? I want to live in a big house one day. I want to be the CEO of Google one day. You have to actually have specific. So not just I want to be rich, but I want to make this much money, or I want to live in a big house. What city, what state, what street do you want to live on? Have you seen the house before? The more specific you can talk about, it allows you to kind of make that vague dream into something that's much more tangible. You need that specificity. So S is for specific. N is for non-negotiable. Okay. A lot of us set goals, right? Everyone can write down a goal they want to achieve. You have to make it non-negotiable. And that's with yourself, right? You can't find a way to wiggle out of it, or, okay, I'll put it off another year, or find a way that you can kind of cheat yourself. It has to be something you have to achieve. Set a deadline for yourself. By 2021, I am going to run the New York Marathon, right? Be specific about it so it can't be non-negotiable, and set up the apparatus, set up the foundation for you to actually achieve that goal. So make it non-negotiable. A is all about action. Okay. This is about building in the specifics. It connects to the first step, but it's actually, here are the action steps I am going to take to achieve that goal. It's not enough just to want something or to dream something. You have to put down the 10, the 20, the 30 steps that you are proactively going to take to achieve that goal. So that's SNA. P, and this is the most important, and it's a big theme in the Lemonade Life. P is for purpose. Okay. So many people forget this part when they're setting goals. Why are you setting this goal? Why is this goal important to you? Take the extra time to think about it. Are you doing this for yourself? Are you doing it for your family? Are you doing it to prove something to yourself or to somebody else? When you have that underlying purpose, again, the reason why you do what you do, it connects that goal to make it all make sense. You don't just want to run the New York Marathon. You want to do it because, it's a challenge you're setting for yourself, or you want to raise money for someone or an organization that's meaningful to you. So SNAP, make sure you remember that next time you're setting goals.
Perfect. Speaking of goals, you encourage everyone to write themselves a $10 million check. Tell us why.
I do. So there's a great story in the Lemonade Life about Jim Carrey, the actor. And Jim Carrey, when he first came to Los Angeles, things weren't going so well. Okay. He wasn't getting hired before we all saw him in the wonderful movies he's made. He was getting rejected by directors and casting directors and agents on a daily basis. And most people in that situation would feel defeated, right? They'd feel rejected. They'd feel failure. But what he would do is each night after having those slate of rejections, he would drive up in Los Angeles to Mulholland Drive. And he would have this conversation with himself, right? Almost that self-care we just talked about, that self-compassion. And he would tell himself these positive affirmations. He would tell himself, despite what happened during the day, how much directors loved him, how much casting agents, just thought he was hilarious. And he would tell himself every single night. And he decided to write himself a $10 million check. He didn't have any real jobs. He wasn't getting paid to be in big movies. But he post-dated it for 1995. This was several years prior. And his goal, very specifically, was to earn $10 million for a film by the end of 1995. And he kept it in his wallet, and every day he would look at it. And after working hard and getting some breaks on TV and later in movies, he was paid $10 million for a film that he made by 1995. And he was able to accomplish that goal. It doesn't mean it happens for everybody, but I do implore everyone to write a $10 million check to themselves. It won't cost you anything, and you can leave it in your wallet. Again, it doesn't have to be money oriented. Maybe that's not the big goal in your life, but something tangible that you can remind yourself. It may just be a note or a goal. You can put it next to your bed. You can put it up in your office. You can keep it in your wallet, but something you can hold close to you that you're working towards, and you can look at every single day to remind you of who you are, and then to remind you of your greatness. So I think that's a very powerful lesson that all of us can do on a daily basis.
You never know, Zack, how many future millionaires you may have inspired today who may be writing a check to themselves as we speak, perhaps, even as a first step in their journey.
Excellent.
So in your book, you write that it's important to check your wolf pack. What does that mean?
So all of us have a wolf pack, okay? These are the people, or you should have a wolf pack at least. These are the people that you spend your time and energy with. These could be people at work. They could be people in your personal life, in your relationships, whoever is kind of in your inner circle. And it's important to curate that wolf pack, to check that wolf pack, meaning, do an assessment of who you have around you. Who are you dedicating your time and energy to? We talked about eternal excusers. If you're dedicating your life and your time to people who are bringing you down, they're tearing you down from your greatness. Those are not people that you really want in your life. And that may sound harsh, but it's important because, Jim Rohn has said that, the great leadership and inspirational speaker has said that, we're the average of the 5 people with whom we spend the most time with. And it's really true. So you really want to build this team of people around you. Again, these are personal relationships, they're professional relationships, family relationships, people that are lifting you up, people who get you. Doesn't mean they're only feeding you positive things. They could be giving you, constructive feedback. But these are people you trust. Just make sure that you understand who you're dedicating your life to. And in the Lemonade Life, I talk about even taking that further. It's not just the 5 people in your life. It's the 5 foods you eat. It's the 5, shows that you binge watch. It's the 5 books you read. It's the 5, movies you watch. Make lists of 5 of the things you're doing in your life. You'll get a great snapshot of how you're spending your time and energy. And then you can curate and adjust accordingly so you can build the life that you really want. So you're directing and optimizing your time and energy towards things that lift you up and move you closer to creating the Lemonade Life.
Great. So what's the best way to apply the Lemonade Life to win at work?
There are so many ways to win at work. I talk about this idea from the Greek alphabet, right? Which is the first 2 letters, which are alpha and beta. And I don't want to get into the complexities of the financial aspects of that, but you can read in the Lemonade Life the details. But basically, a lot of people, when they look for a job, are chasing what's beta. It's really the volatility. They go after the job itself relative to other jobs. So if their friends are flocking to Wall Street in New York, they say, okay, that's where I need to be. That's where everybody's going. That's the hot industry. I need to go work on Wall Street. Similarly, on the West Coast, folks who want to make it as an entrepreneur in the tech world, they head out to Silicon Valley or to Mountain View. So they can join Google. And that's great. And if that's what you're meant to be, that's fantastic. But don't just do it because the job sounds amazing. That's what beta is. You don't want to chase beta like a change chaser. What you actually want to go for is alpha. Alpha is all about outperformance. It's actually about your personal outperformance. And it says that it doesn't matter what the job is. It matters where you can outperform. So you don't have to work in the hot industry. And this goes for starting a business. You don't need to come up with the $1 trillion idea that's going to change the world. If you can, Congratulations. But you can look at any single industry and find a way to disrupt it, right? With a small change, a large change. So really focus on outperformance for yourself, because that's where you're going to shine, no matter the type of job, no matter the industry, rather than just chasing what the herd mentality does. So focusing on the alpha and beta. And then connected to that is another concept, which is to apply your edge. All of us have an edge. It's something that we are fundamentally good at and perhaps better at than other people. And it doesn't need to be these big, glorious things. It can be small things that you're better at. And whatever that edge is, make sure it shines at work. Make sure you bring it to the forefront. And again, you don't need to be the team leader. You don't need to be the star of the game, but you find ways that you can contribute, sharing that edge. And I talk about a lot of examples of how you can do that, from billionaire entrepreneurs who've gone on to build some of the largest skyscrapers in New York to the founder of Gap. There's a great story about Alibaba and Jack Ma, how he was able to kind of look outside his traditional comfort zone in his world to find new opportunities beyond. And that's another thing that you can do at work. Don't just focus on the microcosm of your team or your section in your organization. Look beyond. Look to other aspects of your organization for places to shine, places to partner, opportunities that you can see that are beyond your immediate microcosm. So those are some ways to win at work.
Great. So it's all about maximizing alpha, right? So
It
try
is.
to get jobs that you're great at and that enable you to outperform.
Yes.
My question to you, Zack, is that sometimes both these things come with the number of years that you spend in a job. And if that is true, how do you then break free from your comfort zone, perhaps maybe your sweet spot, and then venture into uncharted territories that you would normally expect a daring disruptor to do?
So daring disruptors can come in many different forms. There's not a one size fits all. So, it's okay to work for someone else for 30 years. That does not make you, a steady settler by definition. Okay. Many people can excel working for other people. You do not have to escape the 9 to 5 and become an entrepreneur, and then you become a daring disruptor. It really depends on you. And if you're feeling happiness, you're feeling fulfillment, you feel like you have a purpose-driven life, you feel that you're creating and adding value to customers or in your organization. Very similar to the Steve Jobs question that he asked himself every single day, whether he's happy, whether he's fulfilled. So that's really a test that you have to do. If you do feel like you're not living up to your full potential, living your best life within your current organization, and I talk about this in the book at length, you really need to leave that job. You really need to find either another role, right? If you have a bad boss who's yelling, or a culture that's negative, that's really defeating you on a daily basis. So many people go on for years and years and years. And I give a TED talk on this called The Secrets to Happiness at Work. And I really talk about how we spend up to 70,000 hours of our lives at work, 70,000 hours. So if you're not happy at work, if you don't feel fulfilled at work, you have to go find something else to do. It could be within your industry. It could be outside your industry. It could be another aspect or area of the company. But take that proactive steps. It may not happen today or tomorrow, but plan it out for months from now. You can actually make the transition so that you are feeling challenged. You are feeling that creativity. You are, bringing forth ingenuity. You are being a daring disruptor at work. Because if not, you will actually turn into a steady settler, and you won't be as productive. You won't yield the results that you probably know you can achieve, but you haven't brought to the forefront.
Great. I have many more questions for you, Zack, but in the interest of time and to give audience a chance to ask you questions as well, I'm going to ask you one last question before we turn to the audience. What advice would you give to anyone watching who is unsure of their direction in life or in their career? How can we all be more grounded?
My advice would be, you have time. I'd be patient. So many people are so worried. They create these artificial time, limits in their life, that by age 20, have to do this. Age 30, have to do this. Age 40, I better make partner. I better get promoted. I better have my own company. There are no artificial time limits. Your age does not matter. What matters is the path that you take. And it doesn't matter if you go sideways, you veer off path. Everyone gets there in the end, right? We all have a shot at greatness. And just because you took a wrong move or it hasn't happened for you yet, it will. Just make sure that you keep moving. And it's that fifth switch, motion. It's putting in the hard work. And if it doesn't happen today or tomorrow or a year or 5 years from now, it will happen. And I give so many examples in the book about people who started later in life. Everyone from Vera Wang to Colonel Sanders at Kentucky Fried Chicken, Betty White, Rodney Dangerfield. So many other great entrepreneurs who didn't make it. Samuel Jackson. A lot of folks really didn't hit their pinnacle or become incredibly famous or successful until after age 40, age 50, and even beyond. So if you're 20 or 30 or 40 or watching this right now, you still have a shot at greatness. And that goes for all ages of life. So just be patient. We all get there in the end.
Awesome. So before we jump to questions from the audience, I'd like to tell you that Lemonade Life is available worldwide in hardcover, ebook, audiobook, and paperbook. It's a very easy read. The content flows really well. I find it to be a perfect dose of motivation and inspiration. And I feel like it provides you with great tools and guidance to achieve your life goals. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much.
All right, we will now open it up for Q&A from the audience. All right, so we have the first question here from Animesh Pathak. From a contrarian's point of view, do you suggest to rewrite your promise to yourself while doing self-awareness check?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think it's important to actually continue self-awareness. This is not a one-time test where you check yourself out and say, hey, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at. Self-awareness is a continual understanding of yourself. And over time, we all change, right? We grow older, we have different perspectives, different preferences. And it's important to understand truly who you are throughout your life. And so making a promise at age 20 or what your goals would be, those may change a year later. They may change 5 or 10 years later. So yes, it's okay to continue that self-awareness. It's okay to update your promises to yourself or the goals that you set. This should be an iterative process, not really a one-time situation. So great question. But yes, it's important to continue the self-awareness and continue updating your goals and your promises to yourself. Keep your promises, but it's okay to update them and add to them over time.
Great. We have the next question from Peter. What advice do you have for high schoolers approaching college?
Thank you, Peter. So many great pieces of advice I can give. I think the most important thing is, again, that you have time. And I think a lot of people just want to hit the ground running and jump in and I have to major in this and I have to get this internship and I have to get this job. Take some time to really understand, again, who you are. It's hard for someone that young, if you can do it, to really focus on self-awareness. But I think if you apply the lessons and the tenets in the Lemonade Life, anyone at any age, including at high school, including in college, can start to really understand who they are. Take time in college to understand really what you're good at. That may be taking, classes that you think you're going to major in, but you actually end up not liking it and you find something new. It's okay to intern at different places and understand, different aspects of business or the nonprofit world or being a teacher or a doctor or whatever you aspire to be. This is your time to take chances when you're young. And that can happen even after college. You don't have to find your dream job at age 22. You can take time to start a business, to work for somebody else, to change industries. That's really your time to experiment and to understand who you are and what you're good at. And I think the sooner you can do that, even now in high school going into college, but take that time, be patient, and explore opportunities. I think that's the best advice that I'd give to someone at that age. So thanks, Peter.
All right. So Penny is asking if there are any hints for breaking out of a rut.
Penny, thank you for your question. Yeah, a lot of people get stuck in a rut. And so the first thing I'd tell you is you're not alone, okay? A lot of people are in that situation, and sometimes it's temporary, sometimes it's longer than temporary. I think the best thing to do is to start flipping these 5 switches. And so it's really about, as I talked about earlier, rewiring your brain. And I think it doesn't mean that you're happy all the time, but it's really reminding yourself of your greatness. I mean, I truly fundamentally believe that everyone has a shot at greatness. And it may not be knocking on your door and be right in front of your face that you're seeing it every day because you might not see those results. But I do believe that if you can orient yourself towards a more positive outlook, right? Incorporating some of these things of positive psychology, the things about kindness and about happiness and about gratitude. I think those are ways to continue your happiness. Focus on the things that you do have in your life, not what you don't. A lot of people get in a rut because their friends have something they don't, or their families are succeeding in work and they're not. Focus on the things that you do have that they don't, right? Or just focus on the things that you have. It doesn't have to be a comparison, right? Focus on the value that you've added or the things that you've accomplished, whether it was today or it was 5 years ago. Anything that you can do to kind of build that momentum. And, it doesn't matter where you are today. I'd really focus on tomorrow and the next day. Because again, in the Lemonade Life, it's 365 opportunities each year to shine. And so if you're in a rut today, tomorrow it resets. And so focus on some of these techniques that we've talked about. And the Lemonade Life has a lot more of ways that you can bring happiness into your life and kind of move away from either being an eternal excuser or a change chaser or a steady settler, and even identifying what those underlying issues are. I talk a lot about habits in the book too, and ways that we can break bad habits and move them towards more positive ones.
Great. So the next question is from Elia. I tend to be more process-oriented rather than goal-oriented. Do you think goals are essential? And if so, how do I come up with goals when they don't come to me naturally?
Thank you for that question. So process is important, but it shouldn't overtake your life. So a lot of people plan and plan and plan, and they focus on process and they strategize and they sanity check and they scenario test. And that's great, but you can't do that forever. And so process works, but if you don't have goals that you're working towards, process is just a process. And so, yes, you do need goals in your life. And so goals may not be natural, and that's fine. Not everyone can just, list 50 goals they want to achieve in life. I think it's really spend 30 minutes sitting down and asking yourself, what do I want in my life? It's a simple question. What do I want in my life? And if the answer doesn't come to you immediately, that's okay. But write down the things you want. They may be little things that you don't like about your life, or maybe things you like about your life that you can improve. And from there, when you think of these little things, there might be bigger things that you want. Maybe you enjoy your job. Maybe you don't. Maybe you like living where you live. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're in the wrong relationship. Maybe you're in the right relationship. Understand who you are, understand the purview of your life, and then find ways that you can build upon that, where you can get more incremental wins. Start with the small wins, start with the small goals, and work your way up to big goals if they don't come naturally. I think that's one thing you can do. But don't let process, which is very important, but don't let process overtake goals. You need goals and you need something to work toward, because again, it's all about a purpose-driven life. And then once you have those goals, absolutely, process counts, and you should have the right process. And this goes whether you're running a company or you're in your personal life.
Next, we have a question from Laura about self-awareness. Self-awareness is a broad term. How do you recommend to develop it and stay true to yourself and not the environment?
Laura, thank you. That is a great question. Self-awareness is a broad term. You're right. And it's really, I walk through in the Lemonade Life very specific things that you can do to understand yourself better. One of the things you can do is to really do something that's, I call a P SWOT in the book. There's a SWOT analysis, which you may have heard about in business. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you can basically do it on a personal level. And it's really just taking a matrix on a piece of paper, 4 boxes, one for strengths, one for weaknesses, one for opportunities, one for threats. And really identifying, again, what are you good at and what are you not good at, right? And being honest with yourself, right? It may take you a couple iterations to do. This will help you understand, not that you have to, improve all these things you're not great at, but it's really, what am I good at? And then connecting those to opportunities. So how can I use the skills that I am good at and allow myself to shine? And then, not being too critical, right? We want to improve ourselves. We want to understand ourselves. But I think a lot of people are chasing, what they think they should be or the person they think they should be rather than who they're meant to be. And I think when you can break that artificial dependence, it allows you to kind of walk a better path of independence. And that's what we all want. It doesn't mean we're walking a lonely road and we're kind of a solo artist on a trapeze wire, but it means that we're independent minded. Right? We make our own decisions. We make our own choices. We live with those choices in a responsible manner, but we're not living our life based on someone else. So spend the time to practice it. It doesn't come to everybody immediately, but understanding who you are will help you care for yourself better. And it'll actually improve your relationships with other people as well, because you'll understand yourself better and what you want. And that allows you to give to others and help others more so than you may have been able to do before.
Next, Rini has a question regarding understanding who you really are. How do you differentiate between enjoying something because you can do it well, that is over repetition, versus something that truly reflects your aptitudes?
Thank you so much for that question. That is a great question. Look, it's okay to enjoy things and to do them over and over. That's really having pleasure and things that we can do in repetition. Those are positive things. But if you're doing it just because it's easy or it's in that comfort zone, that's where it can get a little trickier, a little dangerous, right? I think it's okay to do that. Look, happiness is about the pursuit of pleasure and things that we enjoy, right? But it can also be about things that we're good at. And if we want to take risks, and I talk about risks, it's the second switch. How do we take more calculated risks And a lot of that is built on our strengths. So we can take better risks where we look at risk and reward based on the things that we're good at. So I would implore everyone who wants to be able to dare a little bit more, not necessarily becoming very risky if you're already risk averse, but taking more risks that allow you to reach more opportunities. And that can be everything from starting your own company as an entrepreneur, but it can also be doing things that you don't normally do. And I find the people that are willing to escape their comfort zone, who are willing to take 1, 2, 3, 4 steps outside that comfort zone, albeit they may be baby steps, those are the people that are able to achieve more in life because they expand the pie of opportunity beyond that immediate microcosm. And those people who go outside their comfort zone, and look, when you do that, naturally, you may fail, right? And that's okay. But the greatest entrepreneurs, the people who are most successful, they don't get it the first time, right? They fail 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 times, right? People fail thousands and thousands of times. I talk about in The Lemonade Life. A billionaire today who's been knighted by the Queen. You'll know it when you read it. Failed thousands and thousands of times before he created one of the products that you use in your house every single day. So, and it's not Thomas Edison. And so it's important to step outside your comfort zone because I think that that's where you create more opportunities for yourself.
You talked about entrepreneurship, Zack, and it reminded me of something I read about entrepreneurship in your book. Again, that resonated very much with me, even though I haven't been an entrepreneur myself, which is that entrepreneurship is a lonely road to greatness.
It is.
I think that rings so true when I look at all the entrepreneurs around me.
It is. Entrepreneurship is a lonely road to greatness. And when you become an entrepreneur, everybody equates it with, you get to escape the 9 to 5, you work for yourself. It's this unbelievable freedom. And all of that's true. But I would also remind you of the other side, right? What you don't read about in the newspapers, or you don't see the photos of the private jets and the yachts and all the other things that come with material success. You're going to work harder. You're going to work longer than you did when you work for someone else. You may not sleep very much when you're trying to build something that's going to change the world. And I would just remind you of the other side of entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a CEO, and I love what I do. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else but what I'm doing right now. But you have to actually know what you're getting into. And it can be a lonely road to greatness. It's a lonely road when you start trying to build it, when you're playing every single person or role in your organization. You could be the CEO and you could be the secretary and the board of directors and the marketing person, the salesperson, and every other position in the organization as well. But that lonely road can turn into greatness. And, I try to remind people, and I talk about in the Lemonade Life when I speak at companies, after the struggle, there's greatness on the other side. And you may not see it, you may not be able to touch it or taste it or feel it, but it's there. And whatever struggle you're going through, whether you're building a business as an entrepreneur or a personal struggle, or you're stuck in a rut, like that earlier question, just remember there's greatness on the other side waiting for you. And it's just about climbing over that mountaintop, and eventually you will get there.
Okay, so we have one more question from Brian. What kind of self-talk do you personally use to stay focused and remove distractions?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I talk a lot about distractions in the book and this idea of noise. And, all of us naturally are going to hear noise, right? There's the noise we hear outside, but there's also a lot of people who are going to be, pulling and pushing for your attention, right? It's everything from, come over here and work in this job or work in this field, or, you can't do this or you can't do that. Everyone has an opinion of what you should do with your life, right? It goes back to that idea of an eternal excuser. So noise is constantly around us. There's competitors in life. There's competitors in business. And it's really important to filter the noise in life. So I think the first thing you can do is to recognize that there is noise, right? Not just subconsciously, but no, there are things around you that are actively competing for your attention. And those things are the chief distractors in your life. They operate and thrive in the lemon life. I think what you have to do is, number one, recognize that noise. And number two, replace it with things that you're really focused on. So if you're focused on building a business or, focused on a relationship that you're trying to build, use that as your impetus, right? Like you need to have laser focus on building that and not be, pulled in different corners. I think one way people get distracted by noise, and I talk about this in the Lemonade Life, is to have a plan B, is to have a backup plan. People love to say, well, I'm going to do this. This is my plan A. But if that doesn't work out, I always have plan B. No, you need to get rid of plan B. I really implore everybody when they're going to go do something to go do it. Okay. It doesn't mean be irresponsible or, make bad decisions or, give up, stability per se, if you need stability in your life. But if you're open to it, don't have a plan B. because a plan B is a safety net. You'll have, 1 foot in plan A and 1 foot in plan B. And it just, you're not going to try as hard. You're not going to be all in. And it's so important in Lemonade Life to be all in when you do something. And so really focusing on that plan A, whatever you're going to achieve, it's that non-negotiable part, that N in SNAP, when we talked about earlier about setting goals, make it non-negotiable. When you go do something, go do it with full force. And I think you're going to get the full effect as the result. I think that's another way that you can kind of fight the traction and distractions of noise.
Great. Thank you, Zack. I think those are all the questions we have from the audience today. So before we wrap it up, maybe I can ask you one quick question. Is there anything next on your list of milestones that you would like to share with us today?
Yeah, I continue to work on many things. The Lemonade Life, obviously, I'm so grateful for readers around the world. The paperback is coming out August 4th. So I would encourage you to grab that along with the hardcover, which I have right next to me, which is here. And the ebook and the audiobook, you can get it at bookstores everywhere, online, in person, independent bookstores. Also download the audiobook. It's going to be translated, Lemonade Life, into several different languages around the world. So I'm very grateful for that as well. And you can find more information at lemonadelifebook.com. You can also read me almost every day in Forbes, where I'm very grateful to have over 110 million readers. So thank you very much for being loyal readers. Very grateful to everyone around the world. And then continuing to work at my company, Make Lemonade, which I'm very proud of what we've built as a financial technology company, comparisons for student loan refinancing and student loans and personal loans and credit cards. And that's at makelemonade.co. So it's exciting and very grateful to be with you, Dipti, as well here at Google.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Zack. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And I really want to thank you on behalf of all Googlers for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. I hope many Googlers were just as inspired as I was with your talk today. So thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you to everyone at Google. Thank you, Dipti, for hosting this, and to all the Googlers around the world. Thank you very much for having me. Feel free to reach out to me on social media. I love speaking with folks around the world, and I'll be happy to answer anything else you have, and let me know what you think about the Lemonade Life. Can't wait for you to read it and listen to the audiobook.
Great. Go get your copy.